Hello, my amazing artist. This is a project based off of the symbols and emblems of our state of South Carolina. This is our first project in this unit, and in this project, we're going to be using the elements of art, line, to create a Carolina Wren, and then we're going to add some patterns for feathers and details on the wren. We're going to be working with color at the end to finish them off. So I want to show you what your project will look like when you are done. These are just examples of the little Carolina Wren. This is the actual colors of the wren are usually browns, grays, and yellows. And then this one is just a more fun little cute version of this wren. So I know right now this might look a little bit complicated, but we are going to break this down into very simple shapes to get started. And so you can follow along with this video, and you can also use the photos in the slide presentation to help you as resources as well. So let's get started. You're going to need your art folder, and I would say you will probably need a pencil, a black ink pen, or a very extra fine Sharpie. The ones that we typically use are going to be a little bit too bold and big for this project, and so we want to use something that writes very fine. So I've got like a little black ink pen here. You can use that. If you don't have those kinds of things around, you can absolutely just use your pencil. And then I'm going to use colored pencils for this project today. If you don't have colored pencils available, you absolutely can use a box of crayons. So either one will work. The colors that I am choosing is a gray, a brown, a yellow, and a black. So you guys can either choose to use the realistic colors, or you could pick 3 or 4 colors that are your favorites and do the more fun version. Okay, so let's get started. When we think about how to create or draw an object that maybe we've never drawn before, maybe we've never even seen that object before, we want to maybe find an image or a photograph online or in a book that we can look at to get ideas of what that animal or that image actually looks like. So if we think about the Carolina Wren for just a second, I want you to look at these different shapes that we have. So the head is just simply a circle, a small circle for the eye, and a small triangle for the beak. The wing and the back part of the neck is an upside down triangle, but if you'll notice, the edges of the triangle are rounded rather than pointy. And then the body itself starts at the beak and goes down at an angle. And this is simply just a half circle. The back of the half circle is another triangle pointing down for the back part of the feathers and the tail. And then we have a rectangle that ends on a diagonal here and part of another triangle here. And then we'll work on the legs together. So basically, this drawing came from this sketch. Okay, I started with this, I did my shapes, and then I added in the details. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. If you do not feel like you are very good with circles, you can always get something from around your house. This is just a lid from a laundry detergent. This is actually a top from Play-Doh, so you could use something like that. But you want it to be about 1.5 to 2 inches at the most in size. So here we go. All right, I'm going to start with the head. I don't want to start in the middle because then I'm not going to have room to put my tail. I want to move the head over a little bit, and I actually have my paper tall, which is called portrait. So if you are working in your folder, that is absolutely fine. Your 3 holes would be on the side and your folder would be open and it's going to be standing up. You're going to begin with your circle, and you can't really tell. Let's see if we can get this up a little bit higher. So you can see it is about 1, 2, maybe about 2.5 of my circles down from the top. So a little bit, tiny bit lower than center. And I've got about 2 fingers between my circle and the edge of my paper. And I am going to very lightly, and I'm going to have to do it a little bit darker so that you guys can see. You guys are not going to do it this dark. You want it to be so light that only you can see it. No one else should be able to see your circle. Okay? All right, and then we want to draw our eye. We're going to come in right about here. So this is about 1 finger in, and I'm a little bit above halfway, and I'm going to create just a small circle right there. I'm going to come over from that circle and do my triangle. And again, all of these are going to be very light. Mine, of course, is just a little bit darker so you guys can see that. If you'd like and you have a ruler available, you can use a ruler to draw your straight lines, or you can just wing it. I'm going to grab a ruler just so that I can kind of get an idea. But you're not going to really see that straight line, so you really don't have to have a ruler. I just want to show you guys the direction. So from the mouth, I'm going to go downhill a little bit. Very lightly drawing a line just like that. It doesn't matter how long that line is. I may not even use all of that line. This just gives me an idea of the shape of the back of the bird. Then from that line at the front, I'm going to create the body of my bird right here. So it's easier for me sometimes to draw because I'm right-handed like this, because that's the natural curve of your wrist. But you can turn this however you want to turn it. Now, one thing that I want you to notice is that this semicircle does not follow the shape of that circle for the head. It is larger because we are creating his belly. So I'm going to come down from here, but I actually want to come out. And I'm just going to keep curving around. To make a semicircle, just like that. So you can see how I just barely, lightly kind of just sketch that in. If you don't like something, you can always go back, erase it, and fix it. Now, that's the great thing about drawing light, is you can always use an eraser to correct your problems. If you do not draw light and you have issues, then we can always fix that later when we go in and add our details and add our color, and you won't be able to see where you've erased. So don't stress over that part. Okay, we want to go ahead now and create this little triangle at the back part. That's going to be an area where we're going to create the feathers at the back. So there is the triangle. And we're going to go ahead from here and we're going to create the small part of this triangle. And it's not going to touch right here. It's going to come over a little bit and come down. And then the larger part of my feather is going to go up, go in a little bit, come back down like that. All right, so we're missing where the wing area is and the corner that represents the back of the bird. So we're missing this little element right here. Okay, so let's go in there and do that. So I'm going to come down about 1 finger from my eye, and I'm going to create a curve right here. I'm going to go out past the head a little bit, a line that looks like that. I'm going to curve around and down toward the bottom. And I'm going to curve around out here and down this way. So now I have my basic building blocks for how to make my bird. Now that I've got that done, I'm going to just gently erase just a little bit so it's not quite so dark. I wanted you guys to be able to see what I was doing, but I don't really want a lot of these lines to show when I'm done. So I'm just going to lightly go over them a little bit. So you guys can still see them, but they're just a little bit lighter. Okay. All right, so now we want to build the body of the bird. So if you look at this one, you can see how if I follow the contour of that, and then that, and then that, and then that, it's going to be a big bump. But the bird actually is curved back here at the back. So let me show you how to create that curve. You're going to start at the head, and you're going to, instead of going from following these lines, you're just going to kind of go around. So you've got the head. I'm going to connect these two together by kind of curving out like this. I'm going to head this way, and then I'm going to curve up right here because I want my little bird to be nice and smooth. So that gives me the back. I've got the belly right here. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the eye. Now, those of you that know me know I love to put a little highlight in the eye. So I am going to add one little circle in there and then color the eye dark black. And again, you can do this with your marker or your pen later. Okay, so we've got that part done. The face is done and the back is done. Now, I want to come over here and look at what this tail looks like. So I'm actually going to put this right here so we can see it. So if you notice, these are just little tiny feathers. And they kind of start right about right here. So I'm going to draw this big one first. And I'm going to stop when I get to the end of that triangle. So I'm going to come out, go around, come back in. Then I've got one behind it a little bit right here. I'm going to come out, go around, and come back in. And I'm not as far out as I was on this one. So now I have 3, and I want to do one more up here. Now all of these 4 little feathers fell within that triangle. So if you look at my original triangle, they're all somewhat in that triangle. This one scoots out just a little bit. So there's the base feathers. Now we want to create these little feathers right here. These 3. Boom, 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 and then one back here in the back. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go from the base of the back, go up a little bit, curve, and come down. I also want to start where I just left off. I'm going to go up above that a little bit, and I'm going to come out and back down. And then I'm going to put another tiny little feather right here in front, out, curve, and back down. So you can stop this at any time if you need to catch up. Okay, so let's think about this right here for just a second. Oh, I forgot one of my little tiny tail feathers. So this one's hanging out back here from the other side. Okay, so that took care of him. When I think about feathers, if you will notice, these feathers kind of break off a little bit. So each one of these is a different feather, okay? So we want to kind of create those so they look like they are separate but together. So I'm going to start right here where this one came off, and I'm going to follow this line up, and I'm going to go out just a little bit and come back in and make a light letter C, and then come down just a little bit. Okay, I want to do that again. I'm going to start right here on the line again. I'm going to come out a little bit past the line, come back in and down a little bit with my letter C, and come in just a little bit. Now I'm going to pencil in very lightly my center line right here. Okay, this time I'm going to go up. I'm back down at an angle following that line that I created earlier. And I'm just going to do a couple of little jagged lines right here as I come down and follow that line down. Come up, do some jagged lines down, and come down just a little bit. And then I want to kind of go in and kind of create a rectangle-like look, like the feather has started kind of separating. So there's part of a little rectangle there, part of a little rectangle there. And you can add another one if you want. And it comes down to there and stops. Okay, so before we go any further, let's look at what we need to erase. So that large triangle that we had out there, I'm going to go ahead and erase that. You may want to wait and erase after you have traced this with your pen. I just want you guys to see how once you clean up those very light shape lines, you pretty much have your bird drawn. So I'm going to leave this area right here because we are about to do the wing real quick. Okay, go in, add that back in. There's our tail. Okay, so I am not concerned anymore about the top part of this triangle. That was just used to create the back of my bird. All I want to look at right now is this shape right here, because we are going to create this wing. I'm going to leave that right there so that we can see it. But I'm going to come up here to this curved part of the triangle, and I'm going to come down. And I'm going to come short just a little bit. And then I'm going to draw a line. And then I'm going to come back to that area, and I'm going to go out to the edge of the triangle that I first drew, down, create another line, I'm going to come back out, create another line, and then I'm going to come all the way up here and curve back around to meet that. Now I probably don't want to do it quite that fat, so I'm going to erase some of that because I don't want his wing to be so big. Erase that part of that triangle. And now I can erase the big circle for the head. So we don't need that anymore. Okay, so we now have the basic shape of our bird, our Carolina Wren. Okay, before we start adding in our details, let's go ahead and look at the legs of our wren. So if you look at the legs, unlike our legs where the knees bend this direction, where we can sit down, bird legs actually bend the other direction. So we're going to start with this leg in the front, which kind of is even with the end of that feather right there. So if I come down and I come right below that, this is where my front leg is going to be. And I'm just going to create an angled line here and kind of a straight line right there. This is going to be the upper part of the leg. And then I probably want to do about the length of to the end of my first knuckle. So I'm going to come down this way now. And as I come down with my other line, I'm going to get a little bit closer because they have very tiny little legs. Okay, so let's look at the foot real quick. So if you look at that, I'm going to come down below those two lines I drew, and I'm just going to kind of do a straight line across right there. And then I'm going to go out and just kind of curve down just a tiny little bit. So I'm going to curve in here, and I'm going to curve out here. Go around and touch. Go around and touch. Okay, so that's our front leg. So now we want to do the other part of our leg that we can't see. So if we can't see it, it's on the other side of this big belly, then it's obviously part of this area of its other leg is going to be covered up. And it's going to look higher, even though it's really not. So we actually want to start our two lines for this back leg right about here. And I want to come up a little bit in the front, and I'm not going to come down as long as I made these lines. And I'm going to go down here and in just a little bit. It will not be as long as this one, but I do want to go the same direction. Okay. And then I stopped this one down here. This one is going to go right here. And I'm going to curl in and out and put a little end on it. Now look, this leg is in front, so I'm not going to finish out the back leg right there. It's actually going to be behind this front leg. Okay, so now we have our front leg and our back leg. Okay. All right, so we started out with just basic shapes. We then got the outside contour part of our drawing done. And now we want to look at what types of patterns can we create. So this would probably be the point at which that I would go back and trace all of these lines with a pen. So you could go in with your black pen and completely trace these lines, and then go back and erase all of your pencil marks at this point. No. With a bird this big, you can get away with using a Sharpie, but remember, Sharpies make fairly large lines, and bird feathers are very, very thin and very fine, and so we really want to make our drawing as dainty and as fine as a bird would be. You could actually use your Sharpie in larger areas like this to fill in the legs if you want to. So take just a second and go ahead and trace your pencil lines. And then after we get these lines traced, then we're going to look at adding our details with pattern. And we are using a lot of drawing techniques this year, simply because we don't have access to paint. And drawing is really the basic skill that we need in all of artwork. So there we go. I'm not going to worry about the legs right now. I'm going to go back, erase any pencil lines. And remember, I said if we draw too dark, it's okay, because we can cover it up with our colored pencils. So now you can see those very fine lines that that pen made. And you can also see some areas that I missed. Okay, so there we go. So now let's look at adding a little bit of details to our bird. Let's go ahead first of all and add some feathers to the back of the head right here. So I'm just going to kind of come in and I'm going to make some letter U's that kind of go like this. And then I'm going to bring a couple down here that kind of go like this, kind of run into that wing. From the beak over, I want to continue those U's that are connected like that. So now we've got two different areas. And now we want to make this little area right here above the eye. So if you can see this line that kind of goes almost through the eye, and then there's like a little eyebrow on it, we want to create that area. So I'm going to put this right here just so we can see it. And it actually starts at about the top of the beak and goes over in a curve and up and kind of comes down and over to the letter U's that we just made. And then this line is going to come up a little bit and kind of blend back in. So I'm going to come over, up, down, and back in. I'm just making it a little bit darker. so you can see that detail. Okay. All right. Now it's time to think about what type of pattern we can add. So for this pattern right here, I think I'm just going to do some little simple lines. They're very tiny. They're not dots, but they are very little lines. And I'm just going to do those in the area right below the eye. This is where this really fine tip pen comes in. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to do little tiny letter U's across here. Now, when I get ready to do the second row, I want to make sure that I start my second row in the middle of the U's that I just did. So I'm going to start in the middle of this one, and I'm going to go to the middle of that one, the middle of this one, the middle of that one. When I get ready to do my third row, I'm going to come to the middle of this one and the middle of that one. So we are kind of offsetting these. And we're making them very small because these would be the tiny little feathers around the bird's face. So we want to finish those out all the way down to the big letter U's that we made. Just like that. Okay. I'm going to leave this up here open because these feathers on the top of the head are so fine that we probably wouldn't even see the detail in those. Now I want to create some larger areas for patterns. So let's look at the back. These are letter U's, but the lines are spread further apart so they don't touch. So I might do something like this. And then I'm going to come down a little bit further and put a little bit of space between each of these. And I'm going to go to about the edge of this second one, not quite the very end, but right past that first little tiny part of the big wing. And then for this part, which is the breast area of the bird, we can kind of swing down a little bit. And we want to make this a curve because we want it to look like he's kind of rounded. And he's not very flat right here. He's kind of fat. Maybe this is a mama bird. And we're going to do one more right here. So it looks a little funny right through here. So let's go ahead and do some more of those little tiny feathers through there. And then as we get closer to the bottom, I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. So they start off very little at the top. They're going to get bigger as they get closer to that line. There we go. All right. So I'm going to do some different textures in between these patterns. Okay. So I think for this one, I'm just going to do some lines like this. So they're letter U's, but they're not touching each other. And then for this one, I think I'm just going to turn it and kind of, excuse me, do some lines. And go back and do some letter U's. Okay, so that kind of gets the top part done. Let's go up here and add in some lines. I'm going to leave this one Maybe add in some more lines here. Leave this one, so we're skipping and adding in some more lines. Okay, before we finish out down here, let's go ahead and decide what our feathers are going to look like up here on the tail. So I think I'm just going to put some diagonal lines in on the end of those. 2 right there. Maybe come up and do a line right there. There. Okay. So these are some smaller feathers. These are 2 tall ones. And then I think for these down here, I'm just going to do some rounded. Maybe bands of color. Maybe right here as well. Maybe we just see that first band and part of the second band right there. Okay. And we're going to go in and do it again right here. And on the ends of these as well. And this time I'm curving back the other direction. Okay, so that finishes that off. And now I want to come down here and just add just a little bit of detail in the end. So this is what I'm going to do this time. Instead of making these really low letter U's, this time I'm going to start off very tall, like a capital letter U. Go one on this side, on this side. Then I want to go out long and go up here. And probably want to go ahead and do another one right here. Go to the very end. And go around that way. Go out this way. There we go. So I think that gives us enough detail. All right, so now it's time to choose our colors and go ahead and complete our drawing. If you want to add a little bit of detail in the wing area, you can. Maybe just do some little ovals that are attached. Maybe do another row here. And I might leave these little areas white. Maybe they're part of the colors of the wing. And so I may just leave those areas without color in them. You know, that's the great thing about being an artist. You get to decide what you want your art to look like, and you get to decide how you want to do it. So I think I will go back in and add just those little lines on the end, kind of like we did with the tail feathers up here. And there we go. All right, you can finish off the legs, tracing those, and I would just go ahead and fill those in with solid black and use the colors to fill in the rest of your bird. So I do know that the area above his eye is white, so I'm going to leave that white. His beak is usually a yellow color. And I'm going to put a little bit of yellow in here, even though the top of his head is not solid yellow, but I want to kind of create a base color for my brown feathers. And then I'm just going to very lightly go with my brown over the top of my yellow. And I'm drawing long lines. Here at the top. Now, when I want to create a pattern with color, I don't have to change colors to do that. I can do a dark brown and skip, another dark brown and skip, another dark. And all I'm doing is just skipping a space in between each one. And then I can go back and very lightly do brown, but this time I'm not bearing down much at all. It's very, very light, and that creates a pattern. So I think I'm just going to do solid yellow in this area, because these little birds do have a lot of yellow and brown in them. And again, I'm going to go back and do that pattern. Now, like I said, you do not have to use the actual colors that you would see in a Carolina Wren. You can choose really bright colors. Maybe you want your wren to have some rainbow colors inside. But I would probably limit my choice to 3 or 4 colors just to make life a little bit simpler. I'm going to go ahead and do under this area light brown under the eye. Okay. All right. The wing is yellow with brown in the feathers. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm leaving the little circles or ovals that we did. I'm leaving those white. I'm also going to leave these little bands at the end. Well, I think I may do those gray. So there's the ends of these feathers. And then I'm going to go in with my gray and I'm going to color those gray. And while I'm at it, I'm going to go up here and go ahead and color these gray as well. Maybe I'll do the bottom ones gray. Okay. All right. Yep. Looking good. Okay. So I want to go back and add in a little bit of pattern inside these wings. So I'm going to go right on the outside of those circles, and I'm just going to kind of scribble in a line of brown over the top of that yellow. And I'm just barely kind of scribbling a little bit to make these feathers have some color in them besides just that yellow. Okay, here we go. All right, so you're just going to finish this out. I think I want a little bit more detail down here. Maybe add in some smaller letter U's down there just to break up those a little bit. I'm not doing them perfectly. They're not all matching. Doesn't really matter. We just want to have some difference in those. So I think I'm going to do a dark brown for the outer capital letter U. There are pictures of Carolina Wrens in the slideshow. You can always go back and look at those if you are interested in trying to match the colors as much as you can. That is absolutely a possibility. So I'm just going to do these little feathers up here yellow. They're very, very tiny. You could go in and make those various colors. Let's see, let's do some gray in here. And you can go ahead and be coloring in yours. I'm going to go back and match this pattern up here. Darker brown and lighter brown. Right there. And I think I really love the yellow and the brown together. I think those are really pretty. So let's go in and color. You might want to choose to leave yours white. That is absolutely fine to do that. And then I think this right out here is going to be, I'm going to try to match the head again. So I'm going to just do a light yellow up into those bands. And then lightly go back over it with the brown. Just to kind of make those feathers very, very light and faint and very fine. Okay, so I'll let you guys finish those out. And you might want to go ahead and color in those legs. Okay, there's your bird. You guys can finish out these patterns on the tail feathers later. So I hope you've enjoyed this project about Carolina Wren. As you learn about the wonderful state of South Carolina that you live in, I hope you will remember some of the things that we're going to learn about with all of the different symbols. So this is the state bird, the Carolina Wren, and I can't wait to see all of your projects when they're finished. Have a great day.